If I ever see your kind near me again, I won't just slap you, I'll have you arrested." The crowd went silent. You could hear a pin drop. The man who shouted those words was Nathaniel Okoye, billionaire tech mogul, CEO of one of the most powerful companies in Africa. He was dressed in designer from head to toe, surrounded by bodyguards, and stepping out of his latest imported SUV. And the girl he had just slapped? She was barefoot, standing in the dirt, her face red from impact, her basket of handmade jewelry scattered all over the ground. Her name was Zara. Nobody really knew who she was. Nobody cared. Not yet. But what Nathaniel and the world didn't know was that the girl he humiliated in public was about to turn his life upside down. "If I ever see your kind near me again, I won't just slap you, I'll have you arrested." The entire market froze. Time stopped for a heartbeat, then two. The shouting voice echoed off the tin roofs and concrete walls of Ajagunal Market like a thunderclap. Traders stopped haggling. Motorcycles halted mid-turn. A mother paused while strapping her baby on her back. And then, all eyes turned to the scene. Nathaniel Okoye, the CEO of Okoye Tech Holdings, stood in the middle of the road, his hand still raised, the imprint of his slap fresh on the face of a girl no one knew by name. The girl didn't speak. Her right cheek was swollen red, and her eyes widened not with fear, but with humiliation. Her hands trembled as she bent slowly to gather the beaded jewelry that had fallen from her basket. Her sandals were torn, her wrapper stained with sweat and dust, her dignity scattered like the bracelets around her. Nathaniel's bodyguard stood nearby, unmoving, unsure whether to intervene or remain still. Why did he slap her? A teenager whispered. "She bumped into him," said an older woman. "But it was an accident." "She's just a poor girl," someone else muttered. "She should have been more careful." But someone no one knows who was already recording the scene. The slap. The words. The silence. The video would go viral within hours. Zara wished the ground would swallow her whole. Not just from the pain that was familiar, but from the sting of embarrassment that bit deeper than Nathaniel's hand ever could. She gathered her jewelry without looking up, her ears burning from the whispers around her. She didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of them. She stood, balanced her half-empty basket on her head, and walked away without saying a word. She didn't know she'd been filmed. She didn't know the internet would soon know her name. She only knew that she had to sell at least 5 more necklaces to afford medicine for Grandma I. That was all that mattered now. Nathaniel returned to his SUV, slamming the door shut. The air conditioning blasted against his face, but he was still boiling. "Rubbish," he muttered. "These street people think they can walk anywhere they like." His assistant, Bola, cleared his throat carefully. "Sir, that may have been a bit much." Nathaniel shot him a glare. "Don't start." "No, sir, I mean people had phones out. Cameras. Someone might have recorded it." Nathaniel scoffed. "Let them post it. Who's going to challenge me? Do you know who I am?" But Bola remained silent. He knew better. Because the man who believed he was untouchable had just struck the wrong person. And the world was about to find out. Zara didn't stop walking until she reached the alleyway behind Madame Kosi's food shed. The familiar, sour scent of pepper soup mixed with sweat and diesel hung in the air. It was the only place she felt even a little safe, though the word safe was a luxury she hadn't felt since her mother died 4 years ago. She dropped her basket by the wall, sat on the dusty floor, and leaned back, staring at the rusting zinc roof above her. Her fingers traced the swelling on her cheek. It still burned, but not as much as the words that accompanied it. "You're kind." She closed her eyes tightly, hoping that would push the memory away. It didn't. She heard footsteps and instinctively turned away, afraid someone from the market had followed her. But it was only Rukayat, a girl her age who sold boiled corn on the next street. "I saw what happened," Rukayat said softly, crouching beside her. "Are you okay?" Zara hesitated before nodding. Rukayat sighed. "It's already online. Someone posted it on TikTok. It's everywhere. You're going viral." Zara's heart skipped. "What do you mean, online?" Rukayat pulled out her phone, swiped through some apps, and held up a short video. There she was. Standing. Slapped. Shamed. The comment section was blowing up. "This is disgusting. Who does this man think he is?" Find this girl. We need to help her. This is Nigeria's reality rich men treating the poor like trash. The post already had over 80,000 views and was spreading to Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook too. Zara's chest tightened. I didn't ask for this. I know, Ruqayyat said. But maybe it's not a bad thing. People are talking. They're angry. Someone might even come looking for you to help. Zara shook her head. Nobody ever comes. They talk today. They forget tomorrow. She stood slowly. I need to go. Grandma hasn't eaten since morning. Back in their one-room home, a crumbling wooden structure at the edge of the slum, Grandma, I lay on a mattress that had lost its shape years ago. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes fluttered open as Zara entered. You're back late, she whispered, trying to sit up. Zara rushed to her side and gently held her shoulders. Don't move, Mama. I'm here now. Grandma smiled faintly. Did you sell anything today? Zara swallowed. A few. Enough for Pap and some medicine. I'll go buy it now. She didn't mention the slap, or the billionaire, or the video. Her grandmother's heart was already weak. She wouldn't survive the stress. Instead, Zara stepped back outside, clutching the few Naira notes in her fist, unaware that her face was being splashed across major social media platforms with hashtags like, "Justice for Zara and Nathaniel Okoye must apologize." She wasn't ready for what would happen next. Meanwhile, in a glass tower in Victoria Island, Nathaniel poured himself a glass of whiskey. The sun was setting behind him, casting gold and purple light through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. And then his personal line rang. He snatched the phone. What is it? It was Chief Odwale, one of the main board members of Okoye Tech. Nathaniel, the old man's voice was cold. Are you seeing what's trending online? Nathaniel frowned. Something about the market girl? It's just noise. It's not noise anymore. CNN Africa just picked it up. And The Guardian is already calling it the slap heard across Nigeria. This is not going away. Nathaniel's face paled. I suggest, Odwale continued, you issue a formal apology. Immediately. Or the board will vote to suspend you pending ethics review. Nathaniel sat down slowly, glass forgotten. Just a girl, he muttered. She was nobody. But he had no idea just how wrong he was. Zara walked briskly along the narrow alleyways of Ijora, holding on to the little money she had like her life depended on it because it did. Every note was the difference between whether her grandmother would breathe a little easier that night or not. The sun had started its descent, casting golden light over the rusted rooftops and the swarming, chaotic life of the slum. Children played barefoot in the dirt. An old man mended torn plastic chairs under a tree. A woman roasted plantains over a charcoal fire, the smoke curling into the air. Life carried on, as it always did. But everywhere Zara turned, someone was whispering, staring, pointing. That's the girl from the video. Ah, see her face. It's her. Zara kept her eyes down and walked faster. When she reached the tiny pharmacy at the corner of Olacunnel Street, she pushed open the squeaky wooden door. It smelled of antiseptic and dampness. Zara, the pharmacist, Mrs. Eatham, said with a kind smile, I saw the video. Zara froze. You too? Everyone has seen it, she replied gently. I can't believe that man hit you. God will judge him. You're a strong girl. Zara lowered her head. I know you don't have much, Mrs. Eatham continued. Take these asthma tablets for Mama I. Free. And here extra Ventolin for emergencies. You can pay later. Tears welled in Zara's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. Thank you, Ma. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. A message from Ruqayyat. Zara. They're looking for you. The news is all over TV. Call me. Zara's stomach flipped. What now? That night, as the slum quieted into the low hum of nighttime generators, Zara sat beside her grandmother's mattress, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful for once, breathing more steadily. The medication was already helping. But Zara couldn't sleep. Her cheeks still throbbed not from the physical pain, but from what it represented. Humiliation. Powerlessness. Poverty. Her phone lit up again. Another message. This time from a number she didn't know. My name is Chica from Channels TV. We would love to interview you. Please reach out. Zara stared at the message. Then another came in. Hi, I'm Simi from Voice of the People podcast. We'd like to amplify your story. And another. Hey Zara, this is Mo from Instagram. I saw your video and I've started a GoFundMe. People are donating already. Please respond. Zara dropped the phone, overwhelmed. How did one slap suddenly make her visible to the world? By the next morning, her story was all over the country. Newspapers ran headlines like, "Billionaire assaults market girl. Who is she?" The face behind the slap. Zara from Ijora speaks out. Rich versus poor. The violence of class in Nigeria. A trending influencer had even written a powerful thread. Zara represents every voiceless girl in our country. She didn't ask for fame. She didn't shout back. She walked away with dignity. And we Nigerians owe her better. The GoFundMe page created by Mo hit 2.4 million naira in less than 12 hours. Comments flooded in. For her grandma's medications. To help her start her own jewelry line. Because no one deserves to be slapped for being poor. Meanwhile, at the Okoye Tech headquarters, things were spiraling. The PR team had called an emergency meeting. One of the junior interns, Nkechi, was reading aloud from a media report. Nathaniel's slap is no longer just a slap, it's a national moment. A symbol of everything wrong with elitism in Nigeria. The HR director sighed. He won't listen. He thinks he's untouchable. The PR head replied, well, we either fix this, or we let the board fix him. Nathaniel sat in his penthouse apartment, half-dressed in a designer robe, staring at the television. For the first time in years, he was not in control of the narrative. He had faced opposition before from rival tech companies, from government agencies. But this was different. The poor girl he slapped, what was her name again? Zina. Zoya. Zara. She had become a symbol. He ran a hand through his hair, agitated. They're making a saint out of a beggar, he muttered. His lawyer, sitting across from him, looked tired. You need to apologize. Publicly. That's the only way to stop this. Nathaniel stood up and poured himself another drink. Do I look like someone who begs for forgiveness? The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Do you want to be someone who loses their company? Nathaniel froze. The thought of being stripped of his role, humiliated publicly, discarded by the same board members who once worshipped him, was almost unbearable. Fine, he said bitterly. Draft the statement. The next morning, Zara sat by the window of their tiny home, watching the sun rise over the city's rooftops. She still hadn't replied to the dozens of messages and missed calls piling up on her cheap Android phone. It felt unreal, surreal, even that the entire country seemed to know her name now. A week ago, she was just another nameless girl hustling in the market. Now, strangers were demanding justice for her, sending her money, calling her a hero, a symbol. But all she had ever wanted was to survive another day. A soft knock on the door startled her. She opened it cautiously. 2 camera crews stood outside, followed by a slim woman in a long beige dress with a gentle but firm expression. She extended her hand. Zara, I'm Amaka Obi from Sunrise Daily on Channels TV. We're here to listen to your side of the story if you're ready to speak. Zara hesitated. She looked down at her worn slippers, then at her grandmother sleeping inside. She didn't feel ready. But somehow, she knew this wasn't just about her anymore. She took a deep breath. Okay, I'll talk. Across Lagos, television screens lit up with Zara's face for the first time, not as a victim, not as a trending hashtag, but as a young woman with a voice. Amaka sat across from her in the open-air courtyard near Zara's home. The camera rolled as Zara spoke quietly, but clearly. I was just trying to sell my jewelry. I didn't see him coming. I didn't mean to bump into him. But he didn't ask. He didn't wait. He just hit me. Amaka leaned forward. And how do you feel about all the support you've received? Zara hesitated. I'm grateful. But I don't want pity. I want people to remember there are thousands of girls like me working hard, unseen, struggling to survive. I'm not the only one. The moment the interview aired, the country erupted with renewed outrage and admiration. She's so well-spoken. This girl has strength. She deserves everything good coming her way. And in his office, Nathaniel watched the interview in silence. His jaw tightened. His lawyer had already submitted the drafted apology, but after seeing this interview, the PR team insisted on something more than a statement. They wanted him to record a video. Late that afternoon, a shaky video hit social media. Nathaniel sat behind a polished mahogany desk in a designer suit, hands clasped together. He looked directly into the camera. To the young woman I hurt, Zara, and to every Nigerian who felt pain watching that video, I am deeply sorry. What I did was wrong. I lost my temper, and I acted in a way unbecoming of any man, let alone a leader. I apologize sincerely. He paused, swallowing his pride. I would like to meet with Zara, privately, to express my regret and ask for her forgiveness in person. And I will be making a 10 million naira donation to a fund to support girls from disadvantaged communities. Comments exploded online. Too little, too late. At least he apologized publicly. He only did it because his company was under fire. But one comment stood out. Let Zara decide what forgiveness looks like. That evening, Zara and her grandmother sat in silence, the TV off. They had watched Nathaniel's apology together. What do you think? Grandma, I finally asked. Zara didn't answer right away. Her eyes were on the flickering candle between them. He didn't mean it. Not really. But I don't care. Her grandmother tilted her head. You don't care? Zara nodded slowly. Because I don't want his apology. I want my own life. A life where I don't need to depend on anyone's guilt to get ahead. Grandma, I smiled faintly. That's my girl. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Okoye Teka's board was still divided. Some believed the apology had softened the public. Others insisted on further disciplinary action. Nathaniel, for the first time in his career, was no longer in control. And Zara, the poor girl he had dismissed without a second thought, was now a name that couldn't be erased. But this was only the beginning. Because Zara was about to discover something even more shocking about her identity. Something even Nathaniel, the billionaire, CEO, untouchable, would never have seen coming. The next morning began like any other, but for Zara, it would mark the turning point of her entire life. She was sorting through her makeshift jewelry tray when a black SUV stopped at the entrance of the market. People froze. Vendors peeked from behind their stalls. A driver stepped out, followed by a tall, elegant woman in a navy blue suit. Zara recognized her instantly, Mrs. Iridi Badmus, one of the country's most respected philanthropists. She had built schools in rural villages, sponsored girls through university, and was rumored to have mentored some of the most powerful women in Nigeria. Zara Musa? She asked softly, stepping toward her. Zara nodded cautiously. I've been looking for you. Zara blinked. Me? Yes. May I speak with you? They sat in a small corner of the market. Zara clutched her tray protectively as Mrs. Badmus leaned forward. I've seen your interviews. Your strength, your dignity. It reminded me of someone I once knew. Zara tilted her head. Who? Mrs. Badmus took a breath. Your mother. Zara froze. My mother? The older woman nodded. Her name was Halima Musa. She was one of the brightest girls in our university class. We were best friends. But she got pregnant young. Your father, a powerful man, wanted nothing to do with her. She left school. Disappeared. Zara's breath caught in her throat. She had never known much about her mother, only that she had died when Zara was 5, and that her grandmother had raised her ever since. Mrs. Badmus opened her purse and pulled out an old, faded photograph. It was of 2 young women in graduation gowns, one of them unmistakably Zara's mother. The resemblance was undeniable. She was brilliant, Mrs. Badmus whispered. Just like you. Zara held the photo with trembling hands. So you knew her? You knew me all this time? No. I didn't know she had a daughter until I saw you on TV. Your face, it's hers. Zara couldn't stop the tears this time. She wanted to become a lawyer, Mrs. Badmus continued. And she would have. But the world wasn't kind to her. I promised myself if I ever found her child, I'd help her. Zara looked up. Help how? I want to sponsor your education. Not just a scholarship, I want to personally mentor you. You have a voice, Zara. You deserve a platform. You deserve more than just surviving. 2 days later, the market crowd gathered again. But this time, not for drama or violence, but to celebrate. A new banner hung across the entrance. Zara's Fund, empowering girls with voices. Mrs. Badmus had started it in her name, with the first 10 million naira coming from Nathaniel's donation, as promised. The rest poured in from donors around the world. Girls from poor communities would now be trained in business, communication, and leadership. Zara would be its ambassador. And Zara. She was no longer just the girl who got slapped by a billionaire. She was the girl who rose. Elsewhere in the city, Nathaniel Okoye stood on a rooftop balcony, watching the city buzz below. He hadn't seen Zara again, not yet. Part of him wanted to apologize again. Face to face. Another part, the stubborn, hardened part, wanted to forget her altogether. But he couldn't. Her voice haunted him. The girl he dismissed now had the power to dismantle everything he built. For the first time, Nathaniel knew what it felt like to be powerless. And for Zara, this was just the beginning of her rise. The nation had already moved on. Social media trends were as fleeting as harmattan winds, one moment sharp and cutting, the next completely gone. But for Nathaniel Okoye, the heat hadn't cooled. Days had passed since his public apology. His PR team insisted the damage control worked. Stock prices were recovering slowly. The media frenzy was shifting toward a new scandal involving a rival billionaire and tax evasion. But peace had not returned to Nathaniel's world, because the guilt had begun to eat him alive. He stood in the boardroom of Okoye Teka's headquarters, surrounded by executives in stiff suits. Charts and numbers filled the digital screen behind him, but Nathaniel barely listened. His mind drifted to the slap, the look in that girl's eyes, the audible gaze from the crowd, the shame that settled into his bones like cold. Sir, are we going ahead with the Kigali expansion or pausing for Q3? Nathaniel blinked. Put it on hold. Murmurs filled the room. Indefinitely, he added, before walking out without another word. That night, he sat alone in his penthouse suite, glass of untouched whiskey in hand. His driver had handed him an envelope earlier, something a courier had dropped off. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was from Zara. Mr. Okoye, I saw your apology. I listened to your words. And while I believe people can change, I also believe change must come with more than words. You slapped me in public. But you've been slapping girls like me in boardrooms, classrooms, and markets for years, without ever touching them. You asked to meet me in private. I'm saying no, because what happened was public. And so is the healing. Instead, I invite you to the opening of Zara's Fund. Come and listen. Not as a guest of honor, just as a man willing to learn. Zara Musa. Nathaniel read it 3 times. He had never been invited as just a man in his life. 2 weeks later, a modest event center in Surulere was filled with guests, NGO leaders, local girls from public schools, small vendors, and a few journalists. And in the front row, wearing a dark brown shirt and no security detail, sat Nathaniel Okoye. Quiet, observant, uncomfortable. The audience was surprised when they noticed him. A few phones came up for sneaky pictures. But no one approached him. Not today. On stage, Zara stood in a flowing mustard gown, holding the mic like she had done it all her life. This isn't just about me, she began. It's about the countless girls who walk through this city invisible. Girls who work harder than anyone but remain unseen. Until someone slaps them either with a hand or with silence. A few people clapped. But we are no longer invisible. The crowd rose in thunderous applause. And Nathaniel, for the first time in years, clapped too. Not out of politeness, but out of something deeper. Respect. Humility. Regret. Zara caught his eye for one brief moment, then looked away. She had forgiven, but she hadn't forgotten. The opening of Zara's Fund was more than just a launch. It was a statement, and Zara made sure everyone felt the weight of it. From the small corner of the event hall where Nathaniel sat, he could see the fire in her eyes as she spoke. She wasn't just sharing her story. She was telling the world she was here to stay. No longer just a victim, but a force to be reckoned with. The applause died down, but the energy in the room lingered like a low hum. Zara continued. "I want to introduce someone important to me," she said, stepping aside to reveal a large poster of her mother. "This is Halima Musa, my mother, the woman who gave up everything for me. She was once a student, just like the girls we are helping today. But when the world turned its back on her, she disappeared. But today, I bring her back. Not in body but in spirit." The room fell silent, each person captivated by the depth of Zara's words. Nathaniel felt a tightness in his chest, as though something deep inside him had cracked open. He had done business with countless CEOs, attended galas, met with politicians, but none of them had made him feel this way. None of them had ever demanded that he face the world this honestly. Zara's words echoed in his mind. "You've been slapping girls like me in boardrooms, classrooms, and markets for years without ever touching them." He couldn't shake it. He hadn't just slapped Zara physically. He had dismissed a generation of women, of mothers, of daughters. He had been blind to their struggles. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere lightened. Guests mingled, conversations flowed, and donations poured in from individuals who wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Zara didn't speak to him, and he didn't approach her. But every time his eyes drifted back to her, he saw a woman who was not just standing tall. She was towering over him, over his company, over everything he had once considered unshakable. That night, as the event came to a close, Nathaniel remained seated long after the others had left. He wanted to leave. He needed to leave. But his feet wouldn't move. It was as if the weight of what he had done, what he had missed, held him there, frozen. Finally, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "You're still here," Zara said, her voice calm, but firm. Nathaniel stood up slowly, meeting her gaze for the first time since he had entered the room. He opened his mouth to speak, but found no words. Zara tilted her head slightly. "You don't have to say anything." He started again. "Zara, do you remember the apology you gave me?" she asked, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Of course, I remember. I meant it." Zara stepped closer. "No, you didn't." Nathaniel's breath caught. He hadn't expected her to say it so bluntly. She crossed her arms, her expression unchanging. "Apologies are empty when they're only said because you're being watched. You didn't apologize to me because you truly wanted to. You apologized because you feared losing everything, your empire, your reputation. But the truth is, nothing you can say will ever fix the harm you caused." She turned her back on him, moving to the exit. "I didn't need your apology. I needed you to change. I needed you to use your power for something good." Before she left the room, she looked over her shoulder one last time. "And now I'm giving you a choice. You can leave here tonight and forget everything. Or you can stay and start using your privilege to make a real difference. What will you choose?" Nathaniel's heart raced. His world, once so perfectly controlled, was unraveling before his eyes. And yet, in this moment, something new was awakening inside him, a sense of responsibility, a flicker of self-awareness he had buried for too long. He had to make a decision. The following weeks were a blur for Nathaniel. Zara's fund had surpassed its initial target, and more girls were being empowered through scholarships, mentorship, and business opportunities. But it wasn't just her fund that grew, it was her influence. She was everywhere. Interviews, magazine covers, speaking engagements. And all the while, Nathaniel watched from the shadows, waiting for the moment when he could finally confront her again. He started reading everything about her mother. Halima Musa had been a legend in her own right, even if the world hadn't known it. She had been the top of her class at the University of Lagos, with dreams of becoming a lawyer. But when she had gotten pregnant with Zara, her dreams were taken away. Zara's journey had never been about vengeance. It was about survival. And somehow, in all his years of power and wealth, Nathaniel had missed that simple truth. He had been so focused on building his empire that he hadn't once questioned the very systems that allowed him to rise. The realization hit him hard, It wasn't just about apologizing. It was about action. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the Lego skyline, Nathaniel sat at his desk, drafting an email that would change everything. The subject line was simple: Zara Musa, let's talk. In the body of the email, he wrote, I understand that I cannot undo the damage I've caused, but I want to try. I want to offer my resources, my platform, my network to support your mission. If you'll allow me, I'd like to partner with you to expand Zara's fund and create an initiative that supports girls from disadvantaged backgrounds across Africa. This isn't just about making amends. It's about doing what's right. He stared at the screen, uncertain whether she would ever read it or respond. The email sat in Nathaniel's draft for 3 days. For 3 agonizing days, he debated whether to send it. Every time he went to click send, a new wave of doubt would wash over him. Was it too soon? Would she see this as another power play, another attempt to control the narrative? He had been so used to manipulating situations, to buying his way out of anything. But this wasn't a transaction. This was about respect, something he had never truly understood until now. Finally, on the 4th day, Nathaniel hit the send button. Zara received the email while she was at the community center, where she'd been meeting with the girls involved in Zara's fund. The sound of the notification breaking through the otherwise quiet room caught her attention. She paused, glancing at her phone screen. Subject: Zara Musa. Let's talk. She raised an eyebrow. Nathaniel Okoye. Of course, it was him. Zara had expected this. She had known this day would come, but she hadn't expected it so soon. And she hadn't expected it to be an email. It felt almost impersonal, a last-ditch effort. Yet, something about the words felt different from his previous attempt. She opened it. I understand that I cannot undo the damage I've caused, but I want to try. I want to offer my resources, my platform, my network to support your mission. If you'll allow me, I'd like to partner with you to expand Zara's fund and create an initiative that supports girls from disadvantaged backgrounds across Africa. This isn't just about making amends. It's about doing what's right. Zara read the email twice. She had expected him to apologize again, to offer more empty words. But this was different. There was an undertone of something genuine, something she hadn't seen in him before. She wasn't sure if it was too late for him to make amends, but she was willing to listen. She took a deep breath, set the phone down, and walked out of the room to join the girls for their afternoon session. But in the back of her mind, Nathaniel's words lingered. The next morning, Zara sat at her desk in her small office, contemplating the email. She wasn't sure what to think. She had spent so much time building Zara's fund and doing things her way, on her own terms, that the idea of partnering with Nathaniel seemed almost too surreal. How could she trust him? Was this truly a sign of change, or just a way for him to restore his image? She couldn't deny, though, that his offer was tempting. The resources he had, his connections, his wealth could make Zara's fund a force to be reckoned with. She could reach more girls, help more mothers, and create real, sustainable change. But at what cost? She decided to take a step back. Instead of rushing into a decision, she would meet with him face to face. She sent a reply. I'll meet you at the community center tomorrow. If you want to make a change, you have to be willing to do the work. Come prepared. The next day, Nathaniel arrived at the community center with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. He had expected to walk into a lavish office, to be received with some form of ceremony or recognition. But instead, he was greeted by a small, modest building that could have easily been mistaken for just another worn-down structure in the city's poorer districts. Inside, the walls were covered with colorful artwork paintings by local girls, messages of empowerment, and words of hope. It wasn't what Nathaniel had envisioned. It was real, raw, and unapologetically honest. Zara stood by the entrance, arms crossed, her gaze steady and assessing. Nathaniel extended his hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Zara didn't take his hand. Instead, she motioned for him to follow her into a small room, where a group of young girls were gathered around, laughing and talking. The moment he walked in, the chatter stopped. Every pair of eyes turned to him. Everyone, this is Nathaniel Okoye, Zara said, her voice calm but firm. He's here because he wants to help. He says he wants to make amends. Let's see if he means it. Nathaniel swallowed hard. The weight of their gazes was heavier than he expected. One of the girls, about 14, raised her hand. "Do you think we're worth helping?" Nathaniel blinked, thrown off by the bluntness of the question. "Of course," he said, his voice sounding less confident than he would have liked. Another girl spoke up. "Why did you slap Zara?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. It was raw, direct, and unflinching. Zara stood silently, watching him carefully. "I didn't know who she was," he said, his voice faltering. "I was arrogant. I thought I was better, and I treated her like she didn't matter. And for that, I am sorry." There was a long pause. Zara's eyes didn't leave his face. She had asked the girls to speak their truth, and she wasn't about to back down now. "I need to know if you're here for the right reasons, Nathaniel. If you're truly committed to this, it's not going to be easy. Are you ready to do the work?" Nathaniel nodded. He wasn't sure he could prove it in a single moment, but he knew one thing. For the first time in his life, he was ready to try. The meeting lasted for hours. Nathaniel spoke with the girls, answered their questions, and listened as they shared their stories. It wasn't easy. It wasn't comfortable. But by the end of the session, something had shifted in him. He didn't have all the answers, and he knew he could never fully undo the damage he had caused. But he was committed to learning, to becoming better. As the girls left, Zara stood by the door, her arms still crossed. "Well?" she asked. "I'm ready," Nathaniel said, his voice steady. "I know I have a lot to learn, but I'm willing to do the work." Zara studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Then welcome to the team." The days that followed were a whirlwind for Nathaniel. His life, once dominated by boardroom meetings and stock prices, now revolved around Zara's fund and the community center. At first, it felt alien to him, uncomfortable, even. The work was hard. The girls were wary of him, and who could blame them? To them, he was just another billionaire who had lived a life of privilege, indifferent to their struggles. But Nathaniel had come prepared. He listened. He helped. And most importantly, he didn't expect accolades or recognition. He wasn't there to be praised. He was there to prove he was capable of change. Zara watched him closely, never letting him off easy. Every decision, every move he made, was scrutinized. But slowly, over time, she began to see a change in him. It was subtle at first, a quiet humility that was foreign to the man she had first encountered. He no longer acted like he was above everyone else. He began to meet the girls at eye level, treating them with the respect they deserved. He worked behind the scenes, securing resources, building partnerships, and using his influence to amplify the fund's voice. The true test came when Zara asked him to speak at a large conference about the fund's mission. It was an opportunity for him to step into the spotlight, but this time, he wasn't the one in control. This time, he was an ally, not a savior. The night before the event, Nathaniel sat in his hotel room, going over his notes. His mind wandered to that day when he slapped Zara in front of thousands of people. The world had witnessed his cruelty. But tomorrow, they would witness his redemption. He ran his hand through his hair, feeling a knot in his stomach. Was he truly ready for this? Could he stand before the world and speak with sincerity, knowing that some would never forgive him? There was a knock at the door. It was Zara. "You ready for tomorrow?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. Nathaniel didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her, as if searching for something he hadn't quite found in himself yet. "Are you?" he asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Zara smiled softly. "I wouldn't be asking you to do this if I didn't think you were ready. You've been working hard, Nathaniel. Don't doubt yourself now." She stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The next day, Nathaniel stood on the stage, under the bright lights, facing an audience of hundreds. The room buzzed with anticipation. Zara was in the front row, her eyes fixed on him. She had been there for every step of his journey, watching, waiting for him to show that he was truly committed. When Nathaniel spoke, the words came slowly at first, like he was pushing against an invisible wall. "I'm not here today to talk about what I've done in the past," he began. "I'm here because I want to talk about what I'm doing right now." and what I plan to do for the future." He paused, looking around the room. The faces in the crowd were varied. Some were skeptical, others hopeful. He could feel the weight of their gazes on him. "I used to think that success was measured by how much money you made or how many companies you owned. But I've learned something important in the past few months. True success isn't about wealth. It's about the impact you have on the lives of others." He glanced at Zara in the front row, giving her a brief, appreciative nod. "I was wrong. I was wrong to dismiss people like Zara, to ignore the struggles of girls and women who work harder than I ever did, yet remain invisible. I was wrong to think that my privilege meant I had all the answers." He let his words hang in the air, as if giving the audience a moment to absorb the weight of his confession. "I'm here today not as a billionaire, not as a man who's trying to fix everything with money. I'm here today as someone who is learning, who is ready to do the work, who is ready to use his platform and his resources to help those who've been overlooked for far too long." There was a long pause. The room was silent. The tension was palpable. Nathaniel took a deep breath. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I am asking for your trust, because the work is just beginning." When the speech ended, there was a moment of stunned silence. And then, slowly, the audience erupted into applause. Zara, standing in the front row, allowed herself a small smile. She had heard all the right words, but she also knew this was just the beginning. What mattered wasn't the applause. What mattered was the action that followed. The following months were a blur of activity. Zara and Nathaniel worked tirelessly together, pushing the boundaries of what Zara's fund could achieve. They held workshops, provided scholarships, and partnered with international organizations. Nathaniel's role wasn't glamorous, but he didn't care. He spent hours meeting with donors, setting up infrastructure, and handling the behind-the-scenes logistics. He worked with local governments to secure funding, negotiated with international businesses, and slowly but surely began to turn Zara's fund into a movement. And all the while, Zara kept him grounded. She reminded him daily that this work was not about him. It was about the girls they were helping, their future. There were still moments when Nathaniel questioned himself, when he felt like an imposter. But with Zara by his side, guiding him, he pressed on. He was learning, every day, to be better not just for himself, but for everyone whose lives he could touch. One evening, as they were leaving an event together, Zara turned to him with a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know, I never thought this would work," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. Nathaniel chuckled. "Neither did I." Zara smiled. "But I see it now. I see the change in you. And I think you really are ready to make a difference." Nathaniel looked at her, his heart full of gratitude. "Thank you for giving me the chance to prove it." Zara nodded, her eyes softening. "You've earned it. But remember, this is just the beginning." And for the first time in a long while, Nathaniel believed her. The partnership between Nathaniel and Zara grew stronger each day. As they worked together, they began to see the true potential of their mission. They had set out to change lives, but what neither of them expected was that their work would change them as well. Nathaniel had always thought of himself as a man who controlled his destiny. But now, surrounded by the women and children he had once ignored, he was beginning to understand what true power was, the power to lift others, to give them opportunities they had never dreamed of. Zara had always been driven by a deep sense of purpose, but she had struggled with the weight of it all, doing everything on her own. Having Nathaniel by her side, supporting her in ways she had never imagined, helped her realize that even the most stubborn hearts could soften, and that, maybe, people could change if they were truly ready. One day, after a particularly long meeting with a potential donor, Zara and Nathaniel found themselves sitting outside, on the balcony of a cafe overlooking the city. The sun had set, casting an amber glow across the skyline. The air was crisp, and the noise of the city seemed distant, as if the world had momentarily paused for them. Nathaniel stared out at the horizon, his mind heavy with the weight of the work ahead. "It's hard to believe we've come this far," he said quietly. "I still don't fully understand how all of this happened." Zara smiled softly, taking a sip of her drink. "It's the work that matters, Nathaniel. The fact that you're here, that you're doing it. That's what counts." He looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "I know I made mistakes. But I really want to make this right. I want to keep doing the work, even if it means facing my past every day. Zara studied him for a moment, her eyes reflecting the evening light. You already are. But remember, it's not just about fixing things with your past. It's about what you do with the future. Nathaniel nodded. He had learned that lesson the hard way, and he knew it was one he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The next few months brought more success and recognition to Zara's fund. The initiative had gained international attention, and their work was being celebrated by both local communities and global organizations. Nathaniel had continued to use his connections to raise awareness and secure funding, but he had also learned to step back when necessary, letting the people who had been impacted the most take the lead. Zara watched as the girls from the community center began to flourish. They were attending schools that had once seemed out of reach, pursuing careers they never thought possible, and spreading the message of empowerment that Zara had always championed. But perhaps the most significant change was in Zara herself. She had always been wary of trusting others, but now she was learning to lean on Nathaniel, to trust him, to accept his help, and to recognize the difference he had made in her own life. One afternoon, as Zara stood in front of a group of young girls at a new school funded by Zara's fund, she felt a sense of pride unlike any she had ever known. She was no longer just a woman who ran a small organization. She was the woman who had helped create a movement, a community that was thriving against all odds. The girls watched her, eager to hear what she had to say. But Zara knew that today, she didn't need to say much. Instead, she called on Nathaniel to speak. Nathaniel stood up, his tall frame towering over the girls. The crowd was quiet, expectant. He had spoken at many events before, but this felt different. This was a moment where words were not enough, where actions were everything. He looked out at the girls, some of whom had once been afraid to dream, let alone hope for a better future. I used to think I had all the answers, Nathaniel began. I thought I could fix everything with money, with power, with influence. But I've learned that none of those things matter if you don't have the right intentions. And what I've seen in this room today is something far more valuable than anything money can buy. You are all the future. You are the ones who will change the world. There was a pause, and then he continued, his voice strong but gentle. I'm here today because I believe in you. I believe in the power of this community, of this fund, and of the work that we are doing together. This is not about me. It's about all of you. He glanced at Zara, who was standing by his side, her arms crossed but her eyes soft. Zara taught me that true success is about lifting others. And that's what we're here to do. Together. The applause that followed was heartfelt, genuine. It was a moment of shared victory, a victory not just for the fund, but for the people who had helped make it all possible. In the years that followed, Nathaniel and Zara continued to work together, each learning from the other, each pushing the other to do more, be more, and give more. Their partnership became a model for how wealth and privilege could be used for good, for real, lasting change. But perhaps the most important lesson was the one they had learned about each other. The day Nathaniel had slapped Zara in front of the crowd seemed like a lifetime ago, and yet, it had been the catalyst for something far greater than either of them had imagined. Through that moment of pain, they had built something that would live on long after they were gone. Zara's fund continued to grow, touching the lives of thousands, and Nathaniel was by her side, not as a savior, but as an ally, someone who had finally learned what it meant to serve. And as for Zara, she had learned to trust again. She had learned that redemption was possible, not just for Nathaniel, but for anyone willing to do the work. One quiet evening, years after the first time they had met, Zara and Nathaniel sat together on the same balcony where they had talked before. The city lay stretched out before them, calm and peaceful. I never thought we'd be here, Zara said, her voice filled with quiet reflection. Nathaniel smiled. I don't think any of us did. But here we are. Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you. For everything. Nathaniel nodded, his expression sincere. Thank you for giving me a chance. For showing me that change is possible. Together, they sat in the fading light of the evening, content in the knowledge that they had not just changed the lives of others, but had transformed their own lives in ways neither had ever expected. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was calming, but for Zara, the peace of the evening was fleeting. The weight of her past had never truly left her despite the success of the fund, despite everything she had accomplished. She could still feel the shadows of the memories she had tried to bury long ago. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when Zara received a letter. It was thick, heavy with anticipation, and the moment she saw the envelope, she knew it was from him, the one person she had never wanted to hear from again. Her father. Zara's relationship with her father had been complicated, to say the least. He had been a wealthy man, powerful and respected in their community, but he had never shown the kind of love Zara craved. He had never been present, emotionally or physically, and it had shaped her into someone who was fiercely independent. Someone who didn't rely on others, especially not men. She had tried to forget about him, to move on from the man who had never been there when she needed him. But that letter, that simple envelope, held all the old memories she had tried so hard to forget. Nathaniel, who had been by her side through everything, noticed the change in her the moment she picked up the letter. His face darkened when he saw her eyes empty, distant. He had never seen her look so vulnerable. "Zara?" he asked softly, walking over to her. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood there, her fingers tracing the edges of the envelope as if hoping it would dissolve into nothingness. "He's back," she finally whispered, the words barely audible. "My father, he's back." Nathaniel didn't need to ask who he was. The tension in her voice, the hurt that flashed in her eyes, told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't just about a letter. It was about something much deeper. Zara slowly opened the envelope, her hands shaking. The letter was long, but the words seemed to blur in front of her eyes. It was a mixture of guilt, regret, and strangely admiration. He wanted to meet. She folded the letter and placed it on the table, taking a deep breath. Nathaniel could see the walls going up again, the walls she had carefully built around herself, walls she had let him through, but no one else. Not even her father. "You don't have to go," Nathaniel said, his voice firm but gentle. Zara looked at him, her eyes tired. "I know. But I've always wondered if I could ever have a relationship with him. Maybe this is my chance to finally understand why he left. Why he never cared." Nathaniel nodded, respecting her decision, but his heart ached for her. He knew the pain of an absent parent, but this was different. It was as if Zara had been living with a hole in her heart that no one had ever been able to fill, not even the success of her work. As much as she had grown, as much as she had achieved, the scars of her past still clung to her, hidden beneath the surface. "You don't have to do this alone," Nathaniel added, his voice soft but insistent. Zara looked at him, her eyes searching. She had always prided herself on being independent, on never needing anyone. But something about Nathaniel's presence made her realize that maybe, just this once, she didn't have to carry everything on her own. "I don't know if I can face him," she admitted quietly, her voice cracking for the first time in years. "What if it's all just a lie?" Nathaniel placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and comforting. "You don't have to decide now. Take your time. You're stronger than you think." Zara looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing the sincerity of his words. Then, slowly, she nodded. The next day, Zara found herself standing at the doorstep of her father's mansion. It was a place she had never really felt at home in, despite growing up there. The house was massive, a symbol of the wealth and power her father had amassed, but it was also cold, sterile, devoid of any warmth or love. It felt like the house of a stranger, a man she had spent years trying to forget. She rang the doorbell, her heart racing in her chest. As she waited, the door swung open, and there he was, her father, older now, his once imposing presence now diminished by age. His eyes, the same as hers, locked with hers, and for a brief moment, neither of them moved. "Zara." His voice was low, hesitant. "It's been a long time." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Zara didn't know what to say. She had spent years imagining this moment, but now that it was here, all she felt was numb. "I didn't expect you to come," he continued, stepping aside to let her in. "I didn't expect you to forgive me." Zara didn't answer. She didn't know if forgiveness was even possible. All she could think about was how her childhood had been stolen from her, how her father had chosen his career over being there for her when she needed him most. They sat in the grand living room, the silence between them stretching on for what felt like hours. Finally, her father spoke again. "I never wanted to hurt you, Zara. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was giving you everything you needed. But I was wrong. I should have been there for you. And for that, I am truly sorry." Zara looked at him, her expression unreadable. The apology was too little, too late. But it was an apology nonetheless, and for the first time, she allowed herself to consider the possibility of healing. "I'm not sure if I can ever forgive you," she said quietly, her voice raw. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to hear you out, if only for the sake of understanding." Her father nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "That's all I ask." Back at the fund, Nathaniel couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in Zara. He had seen her face the hardest of challenges, but this felt different. This was about reconciling with a past that had shaped her, a past that she couldn't outrun. Zara didn't expect to find herself back at her father's mansion again. She thought that one meeting would be enough, that she would find the closure she so desperately needed. But life, as it often does, had other plans. After their first conversation, Zara found herself facing a difficult decision: whether to allow her father back into her life or to shut the door for good. Each day, she thought about that meeting, about the years of pain that had shaped her. Her father's words echoed in her mind: "I thought I was giving you everything you needed. But I was wrong." She knew he had meant them sincerely, but could she truly forgive him for abandoning her all those years? Could she rebuild the relationship that had never really existed? Nathaniel had been a constant support through this internal struggle. He had encouraged her to take things one step at a time, to be patient with herself. But Zara felt the weight of it, all the weight of her past, of the anger she had buried for so long. Could she ever truly forgive him? Could she open her heart again after all this time? The thought made her anxious. But she knew that in order to truly move forward, she had to face her fears. She couldn't keep hiding from her past. It was on one of these days, as Zara was sitting in her office at the fund, that her phone buzzed with a message. It was from her father, asking if they could meet again. Zara stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the screen. She had not responded to his previous texts, had not returned his calls. But something about his message, so simple, so direct, made her hesitate. She stood up, pacing the room. Was this a sign? Or was it simply her father trying to fix things on his terms, without understanding the full extent of the damage he had caused? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Nathaniel stepped inside, his face carrying the same gentle expression he always wore when he sensed something was wrong. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" he asked, his voice low, knowing the weight of her emotions. Zara nodded. She hadn't realized how much this decision had consumed her until now. It was more than just her father. It was about trust, vulnerability, and the fear of being hurt again. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, her voice tight with emotion. "I want to believe that he can change, but I'm scared. I'm scared that I'll open myself up again, only to have him disappoint me all over again." Nathaniel stepped closer to her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Zara, I can't tell you what to do. But I do know this: you're stronger than you think. You've already forgiven so much in your life. You've found a way to move forward. But that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. If you want to give him a chance, I'll be right here with you. If you don't, that's okay too." Her heart ached as she looked at Nathaniel. His support, his patience, had been a lifeline for her. She had spent so much of her life trying to protect herself from hurt, but now she realized that maybe it was okay to trust again. Maybe it was time to let go of the past, if only just a little. She took a deep breath and made a decision. "I'll meet him," she said quietly, almost to herself, "but I won't let him back in unless he proves he's changed. This time, it has to be on my terms." Nathaniel smiled, a look of pride in his eyes. That's all anyone can ask for. The meeting was set for the following weekend. Zara arrived early, sitting in her car outside the mansion. The house still looked the same, cold, imposing, a reminder of everything she had left behind. She took one last deep breath, feeling her heart beat faster, and walked to the door. Her father was already waiting for her when she arrived. His face, older and more worn than she remembered, lit up when he saw her. He greeted her with a hesitant hug, as if unsure of how to approach her, and Zara stiffened for a moment before allowing herself to return it. "Zara," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I'm so glad you came. I've been waiting for this moment for so long." Zara didn't respond right away. She had spent so many years resenting him, but here he was, standing before her with genuine regret in his eyes. It was difficult to reconcile the man in front of her with the man who had abandoned her when she needed him most. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Zara began, her voice steady. "I'm not here to just accept your apology, because I don't think it's that simple. But I am here to listen. And I need you to understand something. I won't let you back into my life unless I see real change. No more excuses. No more promises you can't keep." Her father nodded solemnly, his eyes filled with emotion. "I understand, Zara. And I'll do whatever it takes. I'll prove to you that I've changed. You have every right to be angry with me. But I never stopped thinking about you. And I never stopped regretting the way I treated you." Zara looked at him, studying his face for any sign of insincerity. But there was nothing. He looked like a man who had lost everything and was finally beginning to realize the cost of his neglect. "I'm willing to give you a chance," she said, her voice softening just a little. "But it won't be easy. I need to know that you can be there for me, for once. Not just when it's convenient for you, but all the time. If you're serious about changing, I'll give you that chance. But I can't do this alone." Her father's face softened with emotion. "I'll do whatever it takes, Zara. I swear." They sat down together, and for the first time in years, they really talked. About the pain, about the years lost, about what it would take to rebuild their relationship. It wasn't easy, and it didn't erase the past, but it was a start. A chance for something new. Later that night, as Zara drove home, she felt a strange sense of peace. The decision wasn't final yet, but it was a step. A small step in the direction of healing. It was one thing to say you were ready to forgive, it was another to actually do it. And as she thought about her conversation with her father, she couldn't help but think about Nathaniel. He had always been there, supporting her without question. She realized now that it was his belief in her that had made all the difference. As she arrived home, she found Nathaniel waiting for her, his expression filled with quiet anticipation. "Well?" he asked, his voice gentle. "I gave him a chance," Zara said, her voice steady. "But it's not just about him proving himself. It's about me. It's about whether I'm ready to forgive him for everything he's done." Nathaniel nodded. "And are you?" Zara paused, taking a deep breath. "I don't know yet. But I'm willing to try." The next few weeks passed in a blur for Zara. The days were filled with meetings at the fund, countless decisions that affected the lives of many, and the constant hum of work that never seemed to stop. But even amidst all the busyness, Zara couldn't escape the thoughts of her father and of their fragile attempt at rebuilding a relationship. She had agreed to meet him a few more times, each time carefully observing his actions, his words, and most importantly, the consistency in his efforts. He was trying. There was no doubt about that, but the scars of the past were deep, and no matter how much he apologized, they couldn't be erased so easily. Nathaniel, as always, was her pillar of support. Every time she returned from a meeting with her father, he was there, waiting for her with understanding in his eyes. He never pressed her for details. He simply listened, letting her talk when she needed to. But there were moments when Zara began to wonder if she was making a mistake. Was she setting herself up for more disappointment? Her father had abandoned her for so many years. Could he truly change? Could he truly be the father she needed him to be? It was during one of these moments of doubt that Zara found herself standing outside the mansion again, this time in the pouring rain. She had told her father that she would give him another chance, that they would work toward healing, but something in her gut told her that she wasn't ready to forgive him completely. Not yet, anyway. She didn't want to go inside. She wasn't sure she could handle more empty promises. Her phone buzzed, breaking her train of thought. She looked down to see a message from Nathaniel. "How are you doing? You okay?" Her thumb hovered over the screen, hesitating. She wasn't sure how to answer. She wanted to tell him that she was struggling, that every step forward felt like 2 steps back. But she didn't want to burden him. She had already taken so much of his time, so much of his emotional energy. Instead, she typed out a simple response. "I'm here, just thinking." Within seconds, Nathaniel's reply came, "Take your time. I'm here when you need me." Zara felt a lump form in her throat. His words were always simple, but they had a way of calming her, of reminding her that she wasn't alone in this journey. For all her fears about trust, Nathaniel had never once wavered. He had never judged her for the decision she made, never told her that she was being foolish or too forgiving. As she stood in the rain, Zara realized something. Nathaniel had become more than just a support system. He had become someone she could trust with her deepest fears, her insecurities. He had become her anchor. Her thoughts were interrupted when the door to her father's mansion opened, and he appeared in the doorway. His face was drawn, tired, but his expression was sincere. "Zara," he called, his voice soft but filled with urgency. "Can we talk?" Zara hesitated, her heart beating loudly in her chest. Part of her wanted to walk away, to leave it all behind and never look back. But another part of her, one that had been buried for so long, wanted to hear him out. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she had promised herself that she would give him the chance to explain. So, despite the doubt swirling in her mind, she stepped forward. Inside, the warmth of the house did little to chase away the cold that had settled in Zara's bones. They sat across from each other in the grand sitting room, a space that had always felt foreign to Zara. It wasn't a home, it was just a house, a place to sleep and eat and exist. But there was no warmth in it, no comfort. "I know I've hurt you," her father began, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I need you to understand something. I was selfish. I thought I could make up for everything by giving you things, by providing for you in ways that I thought mattered. But I was wrong. I know that now." Zara looked at him, her expression unreadable. She had heard these words before, not just from him, but from other people in her life who had failed her. It was easy to say I was wrong, but it was harder to show that you had truly changed. "I don't need your money," Zara said softly, her voice calm but firm. "I never needed it. I needed you, your presence, your support, your love. I needed a father who would be there for me, no matter what." Her father's face twisted in anguish, his eyes filled with unshed tears. "I don't know how to make up for all those years. But I want to try. I want to be there for you, Zara. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to put in the work." Zara stared at him, the conflicting emotions swirling within her. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to hear the words she had craved for so long. But part of her was still afraid, afraid of being let down again, of opening her heart to someone who might not be able to change. "I can't just forgive you because you say the words," Zara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to see it. I need to know that you'll be there for me in the long run, not just when it's convenient for you." Her father nodded, his eyes filled with remorse. "I understand. And I'll prove it to you, Zara. I'll prove that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust." Zara left the mansion that evening with more questions than answers. There was still so much uncertainty, so many layers of hurt that hadn't been addressed. But there was a part of her, small and fragile, that believed in the possibility of healing. She wasn't sure how or when, but she knew that the path ahead would take time. As she sat in her car, ready to drive home, her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Nathaniel. "How did it go? Are you okay?" Zara felt a rush of gratitude as she typed her response. "It's complicated. But I think we're getting somewhere. Thanks for being here, Nathaniel. I don't know what I'd do without you." The reply came quickly. "I'll always be here, Zara. Whenever you need me." For the first time in a long while, Zara felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't sure what the future held for her and her father, but she knew one thing: she didn't have to go through this alone. She had Nathaniel, and that was more than enough for now. The days that followed were a mix of quiet reflection and uncertain steps forward. Zara was beginning to see that healing wasn't a destination. It was a process. A journey that, like any worthwhile journey, had its ups and downs. But she was no longer walking it alone. Nathaniel had become an anchor, a steady presence in the midst of the storm, and his quiet support was something she cherished more than she had ever expected. Her relationship with her father had begun to shift, though slowly. She was no longer waiting for a sudden, dramatic transformation. She had learned that change took time, and it was sometimes messy. She wasn't going to forgive him completely overnight, but she was beginning to understand that forgiveness was not just a gift for him, it was a gift she gave herself. One evening, after an intense meeting at the fund, Zara found herself on the phone with her father, the tension between them palpable. I've been thinking about what you said, Zara. Her father's voice came through, hesitant yet determined. I know I can't make up for the years I've lost, but I want you to know that I'm committed to being a better father from now on. I can't change the past, but I'm not going to be the man who fails you anymore. Zara took a deep breath, her fingers curling into the fabric of her shirt. The words hung in the air, both comforting and painful. There was a part of her that wanted to believe him, but another part of her, one that had been let down too many times, held on to the fear of getting hurt again. I don't know how long it will take for me to trust you, Zara said softly, her voice cracking just a little. But I'm willing to try. For both of us. Her father was silent for a moment, as though taking in her words. Then, with a quiet sincerity, he replied, Thank you, Zara. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'll spend every day earning it. Zara ended the call with a knot in her stomach, unsure of what to expect. But for the first time, she didn't feel the weight of anger in her chest. It was a small step forward, a fragile but meaningful shift in their relationship. As the weeks passed, Zara continued to balance her professional life with the delicate work of rebuilding her relationship with her father. The process was slow, sometimes painful, but it was moving forward, and that was all she could ask for. And then, one evening, something unexpected happened. Zara and Nathaniel had spent the afternoon working together on a project. When the work was done, they took a walk through the city, the streets illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights. There was a comfortable silence between them, the kind that only grew after hours of shared experiences and unspoken understanding. Finally, Nathaniel broke the silence, his voice quiet but clear. Zara, I know you've been through a lot. And I know it's not easy for you to trust anyone, especially after everything with your father. But I just want you to know something. Zara stopped walking, her heart suddenly racing. She turned to face him, her breath catching in her throat. Nathaniel's expression was serious, yet there was a warmth in his eyes that made her stomach flip. What is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel took a deep breath, stepping closer to her. I care about you, Zara, more than I've ever cared about anyone. And I want to be there for you, not just as someone who's helping you heal, but as someone who's invested in your happiness. In your future. Zara's heart thudded in her chest. She hadn't expected this. She had known there was something between them, but hearing it out loud made her feel vulnerable in a way she wasn't sure she was ready for. I don't know what to say, Zara whispered, her thoughts swirling. The fear, the doubts, the wall she had built, everything was crashing down in that moment. But what was more terrifying than that was the possibility of what this could mean. Nathaniel smiled softly, his expression reassuring. You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for anything right now. I just wanted you to know that I'm here for as long as you'll let me be. Zara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a slow, cautious bloom of something she had long denied herself, the ability to care, to feel something real and deep for someone else. She was afraid, but maybe that was okay. Maybe fear was just a part of the journey. Slowly, she reached out and placed her hand over his, her voice steady as she spoke. I don't know where this is going, Nathaniel, but I'm willing to find out. With you. And for the first time in a long while, Zara felt like she was letting go of the past. She wasn't forgetting it, no, the scars were still there. But she was learning to live with them, to understand that they didn't define her future. She was more than her pain, more than the mistakes of those who had hurt her. And with Nathaniel by her side, she knew she could navigate whatever came next. The days that followed were filled with new possibilities. Zara continued to rebuild her relationship with her father, but now she had a clearer sense of what she needed from him. It wasn't just about what he could give her, it was about what she could give herself by accepting the reality of the past and choosing to move forward. And as for Nathaniel, he became the steady presence she had longed for, not just a source of comfort, but a partner in every sense of the word. The connection between them grew stronger with each passing day, a quiet bond that spoke volumes without the need for words. Zara's life was no longer defined by the mistakes of the past. It was shaped by the choices she made today and the hope that tomorrow would be better. She had a future now, a future built on trust, healing, and love. And that was enough. Zara stood on the rooftop of her apartment building, staring out over the city below. The twinkling lights were a reminder of everything she had fought for, everything she was building. There was a quiet hum of activity in the air, the pulse of a city that never stopped. And yet, despite the growth, the healing, the progress, Zara couldn't escape the feeling that something was still off. The past few weeks had brought her closer to her father, and closer to Nathaniel, but there was a heaviness in her heart that lingered. She had expected healing to be a clean, definitive process, a series of moments when everything would suddenly make sense. But it wasn't that simple. Instead, healing felt like a series of twists and turns, some days better than others. She had moments of peace, of hope, and then, just as easily, she would find herself pulled back into the darkness. Nathaniel had been a source of support, but even his presence couldn't stop the doubts from creeping in. He had made it clear that he was there for her, no matter what. Yet, Zara couldn't help but feel guilty for leaning on him so heavily. She had always prided herself on her independence, on her ability to stand on her own 2 feet. But now, she found herself relying on someone else in a way she wasn't sure she was ready for. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts, and Zara turned to see Nathaniel walking up behind her, his expression gentle as he took in her contemplative stance. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low and soothing. Zara gave him a small smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Just thinking about everything." Nathaniel stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers in a familiar, comforting gesture. "I get that. But you don't have to carry all of this by yourself, Zara. I'm here for you. You don't have to hide your struggles from me." The words were kind, but they felt like a weight on Zara's chest. She didn't want to be a burden to him, didn't want to drag him into the complexities of her past. And yet, the more she resisted, the more she realized that keeping her walls up only kept her from healing fully. Zara took a deep breath, letting the cool night air fill her lungs as she spoke. "I'm just not sure if I'm ready to lean on anyone. Especially not you. You've been there for me, and I don't know how to repay that." Nathaniel tilted his head, his eyes filled with a mix of concern and understanding. "Zara, you don't have to repay me. I'm not here because I expect something in return. I'm here because I care about you. And I want to help you, not because I have to, but because I want to see you happy." Zara's chest tightened at his words, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. It was a feeling she hadn't had in years. She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. But even as she did, her mind returned to the challenges that lay ahead. There was her father, whose attempts at reconciliation were still uncertain. There was the weight of her past, which continued to haunt her. And then there was her own heart, still unsure of what it was capable of feeling, or how much it could endure. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore," Zara confessed, her voice cracking slightly. "Some days, I feel like I'm making progress, and other days, it feels like I'm falling apart all over again." Nathaniel's gaze softened, and he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's okay. It's okay to feel lost sometimes. But you're not falling apart, Zara. You're healing. And healing is messy. It's never linear." Zara took in his words, letting them settle in her mind. She wanted to believe him, but part of her still struggled with the notion that things could ever truly be okay again. The pain of her past was still so fresh, so raw. How could it ever fully go away? "I just don't know if I can do this," Zara admitted, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can forgive him, forgive myself, and move on." Nathaniel turned her to face him, his hands gently cupping her face. His touch was warm, grounding her in the moment. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. But I believe in you. You've already done so much by just facing everything head-on. You've taken the hardest steps. The rest will come with time." Zara looked up at him, her heart heavy but full of a quiet gratitude. For the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel entirely alone. She didn't have all the answers, but with Nathaniel by her side, she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could find her way. The next few days were a blur of emotions for Zara. Her relationship with her father was steadily improving, though it still felt fragile. There were moments when she would see a flicker of the father she had longed for as a child, kind, thoughtful, present, and in those moments, she allowed herself to hope. But then there were other moments when his old habits would resurface, the familiar dismissiveness and neglect that had once shaped her entire existence. Zara found herself in a constant state of balancing hope with skepticism. She wanted to believe that her father could change, but the weight of his past actions was never far from her mind. And then, there was Nathaniel. Every time they spoke, every moment they shared, Zara found herself pulled deeper into the quiet warmth of his presence. There was a comfort in being with him, a sense of safety she hadn't known in years. But that safety also made her vulnerable, and vulnerability was something she hadn't allowed herself to feel for a long time. She spent nights lying awake, wondering if she was making the right choice by letting Nathaniel in. The fear of getting hurt again loomed over her like a shadow, but there was also a glimmer of hope, a small, fragile light that whispered that maybe, just maybe, love wasn't the thing that would break her. Maybe it was the thing that would heal her. Zara's journey was far from over. There were still many battles to face, both internal and external. Her father's journey of redemption was uncertain, and her own healing was still in its infancy. But one thing was clear: she was no longer alone. She had Nathaniel, and she had herself. And with that, Zara was beginning to believe that there was hope, even in the darkest of times. As the days turned into weeks, Zara found herself walking a fine line between two worlds. One world was the one she had always known, the world of pain, abandonment, and the weight of her father's past. The other was a world that seemed to offer hope, but it was fragile, uncertain. It was the world she was beginning to build with Nathaniel by her side. She could feel herself torn between these two realities, unsure of where to put her energy, or where to even focus her heart. It wasn't that Nathaniel had ever made her feel like she had to choose. He had always been patient, understanding, and supportive. But Zara's internal battle wasn't with him, it was with herself. She was terrified of making the wrong decision, of trusting the wrong person again, of falling for someone who might one day disappear like everyone else. That Friday evening, Zara decided to spend some time alone. She needed clarity, or at least a break from the whirlwind of emotions and decisions that seemed to surround her every day. She went to her favorite cafe, a small, cozy place tucked away on a quiet street. It was the kind of place where the world slowed down, and time felt like it could be put on pause. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the soft chatter of customers was a comforting hum in the background. Zara sat by the window, her gaze wandering out into the quiet street. She had learned to cherish these moments of solitude. They allowed her to breathe, to reflect, and to catch her thoughts as they spiraled. But tonight, she felt a stirring inside her, an undeniable pull to confront the most difficult thing of all, her past. Her phone buzzed, breaking her reverie. It was a message from her father, and her heart sank. She had been waiting for him to reach out again, but she wasn't sure she was ready for another conversation about their complicated relationship. "Zara, I know I haven't been the father you needed, and I'm sorry for that. But I want to make it right. Can we talk?" Zara stared at the message for a long time, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She had been waiting for this moment, the one where her father would finally acknowledge the years of pain he had caused. But now that it was here, she wasn't sure what to do with it. Should I respond? She wondered. What do I even say? The weight of the decision was suffocating. Her relationship with her father had always been defined by uncertainty, and she was unsure if she could ever trust him enough to allow him back into her life fully. But the truth was, she had missed him desperately. She had longed for his approval, his presence, even if it had always been fleeting. Zara took a deep breath, her fingers finally typing a response. "I'm willing to talk, but it will take time. I need you to understand that." She hit send and sat back, her heart racing. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't running away from her past. She wasn't hiding from the person she had once been. She was confronting it head-on. Later that evening, as Zara returned to her apartment, she was met with the soft glow of Nathaniel's text. "I was thinking about you today. I hope you're okay. I know things haven't been easy lately, but I want you to know you can lean on me whenever you need to." Zara smiled softly at the message, her heart aching with gratitude. Nathaniel's words were a constant source of comfort, and though she wasn't sure she was ready to open up completely, she couldn't deny the way he made her feel. She had been terrified of depending on anyone, but Nathaniel had a way of making it seem safe, even natural. She replied, "Thank you, Nathaniel. I'll always appreciate you being here for me." She didn't know if she was ready to say more. Her emotions were still raw, and she was still figuring out what this was between them. But for now, his support was more than enough. The next morning, Zara met with her father. They had agreed to meet at a quiet park near her apartment, a neutral ground where they could talk without the pressure of expectations. She arrived early, her nerves jangling in her stomach. She had no idea how this conversation would go, but she knew one thing for sure. It was the beginning of something, whether it was the beginning of healing or the beginning of another round of disappointment. Her father arrived on time, looking older than she remembered. His hair had grayed further, and his once vibrant presence seemed subdued. He was trying, but Zara could see the struggle behind his eyes, the weight of his own guilt, the fear of not being able to fix what he had broken. He sat down beside her, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. There was so much unsaid between them, so much history that could never be erased. Finally, her father spoke, his voice low and uncertain. "Zara, I know I've let you down. And I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I've done so much wrong, and I don't know if I can ever make up for it. But I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm doing everything I can to change." Zara's heart clenched at his words. She had heard these promises before, but something in his tone made her feel like this time was different. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. "I don't know how I'm supposed to feel," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to believe you, but I don't know if I can." Her father nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know. I've hurt you, Zara, and I can't change that. All I can do is show you that I'm not the man I used to be. But it's going to take time." Zara took a deep breath, the weight of everything she had been carrying finally sinking in. "I can't forgive you right now, but I'm willing to try to build something. Slowly, one step at a time." Her father's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, Zara saw him as the man he could have been, a man full of regret, yes, but also a man trying, for the first time, to be someone worth believing in. "I'll take whatever you give me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'll wait as long as it takes." As Zara left the park, her mind was in turmoil. The conversation with her father had been both difficult and cathartic. She hadn't gotten the closure she had hoped for, but maybe that wasn't what she needed. Maybe, for now, what mattered was the possibility of a future with him, a future that was still uncertain, but one that had the potential to heal. Zara knew that her journey was far from over. The past still loomed over her, but for the first time, she was beginning to see the possibility of moving forward. With Nathaniel by her side, and the tentative bridge being built with her father, Zara was ready to face whatever came next. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: she wasn't walking it alone. As days passed, Zara felt a subtle shift in herself, a quiet unfolding of emotions she had long buried. With each passing moment, her bond with Nathaniel deepened. The pain of her past still lingered, but Nathaniel's presence in her life felt like a balm, healing parts of her heart that she had long forgotten how to nurture. Yet, Zara couldn't ignore the storm inside her. Her father's attempt to bridge the gap between them was a step forward, but the past couldn't be erased so easily. The truth was, the weight of it all was slowly becoming too much to carry. Her father had finally shown some sign of remorse, but his words weren't enough to erase years of abandonment. Trust was a long road, and Zara wasn't sure if she was ready to walk it. The messages from Nathaniel had become a constant comfort. He was patient, always reassuring her that he was there, never asking her to hurry or make a decision before she was ready. And in his eyes, she saw the love she had never known, the kind of love that was gentle yet fierce, the kind that didn't promise to never hurt but vowed to always be there. Still, Zara was struggling. She found herself torn between the fragile beginnings of a relationship with Nathaniel and the fear of getting hurt again. Her heart was being pulled in two directions. On one hand, Nathaniel was offering her a future, a new beginning, free of the baggage and heartbreak she had known. On the other hand, there was the fear of trusting him completely, of giving herself over to someone who had once been a stranger, someone who had hurt her in the most public and humiliating way. It was a Saturday evening when everything changed. Zara and Nathaniel had planned a quiet dinner at his penthouse. He had insisted on cooking for her, a gesture that seemed both sweet and strangely intimate. When she arrived, she was met with a warm, inviting atmosphere. The soft light of candles flickered on the table, and the scent of a homemade meal filled the air. For a brief moment, Zara allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years: normalcy, peace, and maybe even a touch of hope. "Hey, you," Nathaniel greeted her with a soft smile. His eyes held something deeper than just affection. There was an earnestness in his gaze, as though he was desperately trying to show her who he truly was, who he had become. "Hey," Zara replied, her voice a little shaky. She still wasn't sure how to navigate the space between them, how to balance her feelings with the reality of everything that had happened. "Dinner's almost ready," Nathaniel said as he guided her to the table. "I wanted to make something special tonight." As they sat down to eat, Zara found herself slowly opening up, talking about her week, her father, and the mess of emotions she was still sorting through. Nathaniel listened intently, never interrupting, his eyes never leaving hers. There was something about his presence, something grounding that allowed her to relax, even if just for a moment. "Zara," Nathaniel began after a pause, his voice softer than usual. "I know we're taking this one step at a time, but I need you to understand something." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "I've hurt you before, and I can't change that. But I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I don't want to be the person who hurt you. I want to be the one who helps you heal." Zara's breath caught in her throat. His words, so sincere, hit her in a place she had kept locked away for so long. She didn't know how to respond. She had spent years building walls around her heart, afraid of allowing anyone too close. But Nathaniel wasn't asking for her to let him in just yet. He was offering her a partnership, a chance to rebuild together. "I don't know if I'm ready to give you all of me," Zara said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I'm not sure if I can trust anyone again." Nathaniel squeezed her hand gently, his eyes never leaving hers. "You don't have to give me all of you right now, Zara. Just give me the chance to prove that I'm worth trusting." Zara looked down at their intertwined hands, feeling the weight of his words. She had spent so much of her life running from the pain of others, keeping people at arm's length to protect herself. But in Nathaniel's touch, there was something different, something that made her believe, even if just a little, that maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to be vulnerable again. She took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll give you a chance." Later that night, as they finished dinner and shared a quiet moment together, Zara's phone buzzed. It was a message from her father. "Zara, I've been thinking about our conversation. I know it's not easy, but I want you to know that I'm here whenever you're ready to talk more. I don't want to push you, but I want to be part of your life again." Zara stared at the message, her heart heavy. She had never imagined that she would be faced with the prospect of rebuilding her relationship with her father, especially not after everything that had happened. But as she glanced over at Nathaniel, she realized something. He wasn't just her present, he was her future. And whatever the future with her father might hold, Zara knew she wasn't walking through it alone anymore. Nathaniel had shown her that love wasn't just about grand gestures or sweeping promises. It was about the small moments, the quiet support, the patience, the willingness to stick around even when things got tough. Nathaniel had been that constant, that anchor, and now Zara had to find a way to believe in the possibility of a future with him. And so, with a heart that was slowly but surely opening, Zara sent a simple response to her father. "I'm willing to talk, but it's going to take time. I hope you can understand that." Zara didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it. As she put her phone down, Nathaniel took her hand once again. "We're in this together, Zara," he said softly, his voice full of conviction. "Whatever comes next, I'm here for you." And for the first time in a long time, Zara believed him. The days that followed were a blur of conflicting emotions for Zara. Every day felt like a balancing act, walking between two worlds, the fragile bond she was building with Nathaniel and the tentative reconciliation with her father. Each morning, she would wake up with a sense of hope, only to feel the familiar ache of uncertainty creeping in by the evening. Zara had always been independent, learning from a young age to fend for herself. But now, in this unfamiliar territory of vulnerability, she found herself relying on others more than ever before. Nathaniel, in his quiet but constant way, was a steady presence. And though she wasn't sure if she was ready to give him her heart completely, she couldn't deny the warmth she felt when he was around. That Friday evening, Nathaniel invited her to a private event at one of his favorite art galleries. It was a casual gathering, nothing extravagant, but it felt significant. Zara wasn't much of an art connoisseur, but she appreciated beauty in all its forms. What she loved most about the idea was that Nathaniel had picked something quiet, something intimate. It wasn't about impressing anyone, it was about sharing something simple, something they could enjoy together. Zara dressed carefully that evening, choosing a soft blue dress that matched the mood of the evening. When she arrived at the gallery, Nathaniel was already there, waiting for her with a smile that made her heart flutter. His eyes, as always, were kind and filled with warmth. "Hey, you look beautiful," he said, offering her his arm. "Thank you," Zara replied, her voice soft. As they walked through the gallery, Zara couldn't help but notice the way Nathaniel's hand brushed against hers, how every touch seemed to hold a promise of something more. They wandered through the different exhibitions, and Zara found herself captivated by the art, but more so by Nathaniel's presence. It wasn't just about the paintings. It was about the way they shared this experience, this space. There was a quiet comfort in the way they moved together, in the way Nathaniel always seemed to be attuned to her, asking if she liked a piece of art or whether she wanted to move to the next room. The evening was peaceful, but as they sat down at a small table in the corner of the gallery, Zara couldn't shake the nagging feeling inside her. The tension between her past and her present was growing, and she felt like she was on the verge of breaking. She had spent so long guarding her heart, and now, with Nathaniel, she was being asked to open it fully, completely. But she wasn't sure she was ready. "Zara," Nathaniel said quietly, his eyes serious, "I know things haven't been easy for you lately, but I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to make any decisions right now, but I need you to understand something." Zara looked at him, her heart pounding. "What is it?" "I want to build a future with you," Nathaniel said, his voice steady, but filled with emotion. "I don't want to just be someone in your life. I want to be someone who stands by you through everything. I know that's a big promise, and I don't want to pressure you into anything. But I need you to know that I'm here for the long haul." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She had heard the words before, but hearing them from Nathaniel, with such conviction, felt different. He wasn't asking for her to commit to him fully right away. He was simply offering her something real, something that wasn't based on the past but on what they could build together. "I don't know how to let someone in like that," Zara whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "I've been hurt so many times before. I'm scared of trusting again. But when I'm with you, it feels different. And that scares me too." Nathaniel took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I understand, Zara. I know trust isn't something you give easily, but I promise you, I'll never hurt you the way others have. I can't erase the past, but I can help you build something better." Zara felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. The weight of everything, the past, the present, and the uncertainty of the future was pressing down on her, but there, in that moment, sitting across from Nathaniel, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. "I want to believe you," she said softly. "I want to believe that you're not like the others, that this can be different." Nathaniel smiled, and for the first time in weeks, Zara felt herself smile back. It wasn't a perfect smile, but it was a start. The following days brought a new sense of clarity to Zara. She continued to meet with her father, slowly but surely, working through their complicated relationship. There were moments of frustration, moments when she felt like giving up, but there were also moments when she saw glimpses of the man her father could have been, the man he was trying to become. Nathaniel, too, continued to be there for her, steadfast, patient, and gentle in ways she never thought possible. He never pushed her for more than she could give. He just was. And that, in itself, was enough. But even as Zara began to feel herself opening up to Nathaniel, she couldn't deny the one thing that still held her back: her past. Her father's betrayal, the loneliness, the broken trust, it all weighed on her heart, and she wasn't sure how to let it go. One evening, after a particularly difficult conversation with her father, Zara found herself sitting on her balcony, staring out at the city. She had gone through so many layers of pain, regret, and heartbreak, and she was tired. Tired of carrying it all, tired of pretending she had it all figured out. It was then that Nathaniel appeared, his silhouette standing in the doorway. Without a word, he stepped outside and sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I don't have all the answers, Zara," he said quietly, his voice filled with warmth. "But I'm here. And I'll be here, no matter what." For a moment, Zara let herself lean into him, letting the weight of everything fall away. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid to take the next step, whatever that step might be. Together, with Nathaniel by her side, Zara was ready to face whatever came next. She didn't have to figure it all out right now. She just had to trust that, no matter how hard the road ahead might be, they would walk it together. Zara and Nathaniel continued to navigate the complexities of their budding relationship. Despite the rocky start, the slap that had shattered her world now seemed like a distant memory. Nathaniel had worked tirelessly to prove that the man who had once caused her pain was no longer the person he was. With each passing day, he showed Zara the depths of his remorse, his commitment, and his desire to make things right. Zara's heart began to thaw, though it wasn't without hesitation. She had been hurt too many times before, and the idea of trusting someone fully again was daunting. But Nathaniel's actions spoke louder than words. He had changed, genuinely and completely. His once arrogant demeanor had given way to vulnerability, to a man who was not afraid to show Zara his flaws, his fears, and his deep affection for her. As the days turned into weeks, Zara started to open up to him. She allowed herself to lean on him, to let him into the spaces of her heart that had once been locked away. She still wasn't entirely sure where this path would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something resembling hope. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of pink and orange, Nathaniel took Zara to the rooftop of his apartment building. It was one of those moments where the world seemed to slow down, where time felt like it could be put on pause. They stood side by side, the cool breeze lifting their hair as they looked out over the city. Nathaniel turned to her, his expression soft, sincere. "I never thought I would be here," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight of truth. "With you, Zara. I never thought I could change, but then I met you. You showed me that there was more to life than power, wealth, and success. You showed me love, real love." Zara's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't used to hearing words like that, especially not from someone like Nathaniel, someone who had seemed so untouchable, so far removed from the world she knew. "I'm still learning," Nathaniel continued. "I'm still trying to figure out how to be the man you deserve, but I promise you, I'm trying. I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself too. You've already changed my life in ways I can't even begin to describe." Zara's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know if she could say the words yet, but in that moment, she realized just how much she had come to care for him. Nathaniel wasn't perfect, but he was real, and he was trying. "You don't have to be perfect, Nathaniel," she said softly. "I don't need perfection. I just need someone who is real, who will be there when it matters most." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "I will be, Zara. I will be there. Always." For the first time in a long time, Zara allowed herself to believe it. She allowed herself to believe in him, in them. And so, their journey continued. It wasn't without its challenges, but together, they faced each obstacle with unwavering determination. Nathaniel's wealth and status no longer seemed as important as the connection they shared. Their love was built on trust, understanding, and the willingness to grow together, even in the face of the past. Zara was no longer the girl who had been slapped in public by a billionaire. She was someone who had found her own strength, her own voice, and she had found someone who cherished her for who she was, not for what she could offer. And Nathaniel, the billionaire who had once caused her so much pain, was now the man who promised to stand by her side, to love her, and to make sure she never felt alone again. Their love story was just beginning, and though it had started with pain, it was evolving into something beautiful, something lasting, something real. As time went on, Zara and Nathaniel's bond deepened. It wasn't always easy, but they learned to communicate, to be vulnerable, and to support each other through the highs and lows of life. Zara's trust in Nathaniel grew, not because he was perfect, but because he was consistent, and he showed up every day, ready to work on their relationship. Nathaniel had a way of making Zara feel seen. She had always been the quiet one, the one who kept her feelings locked away, but with him, she didn't have to pretend. She could be herself, flaws and all, and he accepted her without question. And as much as she tried to convince herself that she wasn't ready to let go of her fears, she found herself falling for him, slowly but surely. They spent countless evenings together, talking about everything and nothing at all. Nathaniel shared stories from his past, stories of the pressures of his world, of growing up with a family that expected perfection, of the loneliness that came with wealth. Zara shared her own stories, of her childhood, of the years she had spent waiting for a father who never showed up, and of the walls she had built around her heart. But the more they talked, the more they realized how much they had in common. They both carried baggage, both had wounds that needed healing. And together, they began to heal those wounds, piece by piece. One evening, As the rain pattered softly against the window, Zara sat on the couch, her head resting against Nathaniel's chest. The soft hum of his heartbeat was a comfort, a reminder that she was no longer alone in this world. "Do you ever wonder what it would have been like if we had met under different circumstances?" Zara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel smiled softly, his hand gently brushing through her hair. "I used to," he said, "but then I realized that everything that's happened, every mistake, every misstep, has led us to this moment. I wouldn't change it, Zara. I wouldn't change anything, because it brought me to you." Zara turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "You mean that?" He nodded, his gaze unwavering. "With all my heart." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just the words that made her heart swell, it was the sincerity behind them, the way he looked at her as if she was the only thing that mattered in the world. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm scared of opening up, of letting myself love you completely. I've been hurt before, Nathaniel. And I don't know if I can handle the heartbreak again." Nathaniel cupped her face gently, his touch tender. "Zara, I understand. But I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you, and I'll be here, no matter what. We take this one step at a time, together." For the first time in a long while, Zara felt a flicker of peace. She wasn't sure what the future held, but with Nathaniel by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Zara and Nathaniel continued to build their relationship, brick by brick. They traveled, explored new places, and created memories that would last a lifetime. But the true foundation of their love was built in the quiet moments, in the conversations they shared, in the support they offered each other when life got tough. Nathaniel was true to his word. He wasn't just the billionaire who had once slapped Zara in public. He was the man who stood by her side, who loved her in ways she had never imagined, who saw her for the incredible woman she was, and who wanted nothing more than to see her happy. Zara had come a long way since that day when Nathaniel had hurt her, but it was that very pain that had brought them together, that had forced both of them to confront their flaws and to grow. And in the end, it was that growth, that willingness to change, that had turned their love into something beautiful and real. As they stood hand in hand, looking out at the city below, Zara knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but she was no longer afraid. She wasn't walking it alone. She had Nathaniel, and together, they would face whatever challenges came their way, with love, trust, and a shared commitment to making their future brighter than their past. And as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the horizon, Zara whispered, "I love you, Nathaniel." And for the first time in her life, she said it without fear, without hesitation. Because she knew, deep in her heart, that this time was different. This time, she had found the love she had been searching for, the kind of love that healed, the kind of love that lasted. As the years passed, Zara's life blossomed in ways she had never imagined. The pain of her past, though still present, no longer defined her. She had learned to embrace the beauty of second chances, of forgiveness, and most of all, of love. Her relationship with Nathaniel continued to deepen, and as they grew together, their love became a solid foundation for everything they built. Nathaniel had shown her the true meaning of commitment, and in return, Zara had given him her heart, completely and without reservation. One of the most beautiful moments of their journey came when Nathaniel proposed. They were at the same cafe where Zara had gone that evening so long ago to clear her mind, and Nathaniel, with a look of love and sincerity in his eyes, got down on one knee. "Zara," he said, his voice soft but filled with emotion, "you've taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about growing together, forgiving each other, and building something real. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Zara's eyes as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. She had never imagined that someone would love her so completely, that someone would be willing to stand by her through everything. But here he was, offering her his heart, and Zara knew with certainty that she had found her forever. "Yes," she whispered, her voice full of emotion, "yes, I will marry you." Their wedding was nothing short of magical. It was a small ceremony, intimate and filled with love, held in a beautiful garden where the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow over the guests. Nathaniel, in his sharp tuxedo, looked every bit the billionaire he was, but it was the way he looked at Zara that took her breath away, like she was his world, his everything. And Zara, dressed in a simple yet elegant gown, felt like the luckiest woman alive. Zara's father, who had worked hard to rebuild his relationship with his daughter, was there, proudly walking her down the aisle. The years of pain had not vanished overnight, but they had found a way to move forward, to heal, and to be a family again, even if it was one step at a time. And for Zara, that was enough. It was all she had ever wanted: reconnection, forgiveness, and a fresh start. As Nathaniel and Zara exchanged vows, they promised to love each other through everything, to never give up on the bond they shared. They promised to build a future full of laughter, joy, and unwavering support. And as they sealed their vows with a kiss, it was clear that their love was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter of healing, hope, and endless possibilities. Their life together was everything Zara had dreamed of. They built a home filled with love and laughter, and soon, their family grew. Their children, a beautiful mix of both Nathaniel and Zara's worlds, brought even more joy into their lives. Zara watched as they grew, and with each passing day, she felt a sense of fulfillment and peace that she had never known before. But Zara's journey didn't stop there. She had always known she wanted to help others, to make a difference, and now, with Nathaniel by her side, she was able to turn her dreams into reality. Her NGO, which she had started with little more than a vision, grew into a thriving organization that provided support and resources to those in need. Zara became a beacon of hope to many, a symbol of resilience, compassion, and the power of second chances. Her story was one that inspired countless others, those who had been abandoned, those who had been hurt, those who had given up on love or hope. Zara became a source of strength to them, showing them that no matter how difficult life might seem, there was always a way forward, always a chance to rebuild, always hope for a brighter tomorrow. As her NGO continued to grow, Zara knew that this was her purpose. She had finally found her place in the world, not just as Nathaniel's wife and the mother of their children, but as someone who could change lives. She had gone from being the woman who was once abandoned and lost, to the woman who had the power to make a difference, to uplift and inspire others. Years passed, and Zara and Nathaniel's love only grew stronger. Their children thrived, their home was filled with laughter and love, and their hearts remained full. They had weathered the storms of the past and had come out stronger for it. And as Zara stood with Nathaniel, watching their children play in the garden of their home, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The pain of her past had shaped her, but it had never defined her. She had found love, forgiveness, and a sense of purpose. And as she looked at her beautiful family, she knew that she had everything she had ever wanted. Zara had found her happily ever after, and with Nathaniel by her side, their journey had only just begun. Together, they had built a life full of love, purpose, and the promise of a future where anything was possible. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and put on your notification bell so that you will be among the first to be notified each time I post new video. See you in my next one.